The movement has chosen and chooses to indicate not a road, but a road towards a solution to this existential drama. The road, as you have affirmed, is Christ, the way, the truth, and the life. Communion and Liberation is an ecclesial movement whose purpose is the education and Christian maturity of its adherents and collaboration in the mission of the Church in all the spheres of contemporary life. It began in Italy in 1964 when Father Luigi Giussani left his teaching stint in a seminary in order to establish a Christian presence in Brescia High School in Milan with a group called Juventus Studentistica, Student Group or GS for short. The current name of the movement, Communion and Liberation, appeared for the first time in 1969, and as we all know, the 1970s is a turbulent year or decade for Italy because there are presence of the Marxist movement. So some of the members of the original 1954 GS some of them left, and the faithful ones remain with Father Giussani. It synthesizes the conviction that the Christian event lived in communion is the foundation of the authentic liberation of man. Still established an international presence during the pontificate of John Paul II in 1970s and is present today in approximately 80 countries around the world, including the United States, and a particularly strong presence in Spain and Brazil. This is Pope John Paul IV, and during that time, Father Luigi is also Pope. And this is a picture of Pope Benedict with some of the members. Today, it is around in 80 countries in all continents and is guided by Father Julian Caron, the successor of Father Giussani after his death in 2005. He is a Spanish priest, member of the committee. So I have here a short video which captures the essence of the Communion and Liberation movement. For me, the movement is something it's going inside. It brings you to reflect, it brings you to yourself, and of course to your community. So the essence of the CL charism is a proclamation that God became man. With the affirmation that this man, Jesus of Nazareth, who died and rose again, is a present event, whose visible sign is a communion, that is to say, the unity of a people led by a living person, the Bishop of the Lord. So unlike the other music videos, this one is more of meditative, so I invite you to listen attentively to the video.
What can I call my home? Who is my family? Where do I come from? What is my history? Someone long ago sailed across the sea, left his native home in search of liberty. As he stepped aboard, wasn't really sure what he was aiming toward, what he was looking for. Did he long for home in a land so strange? Did he lose his memories when his name was changed? Did he sell his story for a new world fantasy? He could never find the honest living mind. Please tell your awful song. I finally found freedom more than it could have seen in his American dream. The empire waves of rain will never be the same. The stars shed his grace through a human face. It happened long ago, our friendship shows us how. An event so unforeseen still happens here and now. In a broken history, there's a new reality. If you're more aware than dreamers of death, come and share our liberty. All the walls and we will see a new nation, a new creation. A new creation.
So let us all welcome one of the we call them responsible members of the CM movement in the Philippines from the Fraternity of Communion and Liberation, Miss Maria Lourdes Samson.
Thank you. And I'm very happy that we were given an opportunity to strike a very young friendship with our Brits. I was so surprised when they got in touch with us, and they were very eager to know about the movement as part of their research here in your subject under Father Body. So what I'd like to do is not to present anything more than what she has presented, because she has done an excellent job in researching the movement. She knows more than I do about the movement. Anyway, she has put into a very wonderful, simple presentation of what the movement is all about. And what I'd like to do is just add on a little more to what she has already presented. Right? By the way, the song, A New Creation, was really an original song from our American members. Sorry, not American members, but members of the movement in America. The Bay Bridge Band is composed of predominantly Italians who are in America, and thus you would see the intimation about American history. Washington and Lincoln, of course, not very applicable to our history, but they were talking of how a new creation has been formed. No? So these are Italians who are in a new land. And how can they bring the charisma of the movement in a land that's so different from where it started? So just going back to what Sister Risa has already mentioned, the movement has been founded by a priest, Father Monsignor Luigi Giussani. He passed away some years ago. And it was very interesting because he was a priest who was very much interested in the youth. So he left his work in the seminary and elected to go and teach religion in Vercelli, in Milan, at a time when the churches, he would always say, the churches of Rome and the churches of Italy were full of people. But he could see how empty the faith was. Churches were full, students were being given religious education, but it was very empty and very shallow. And then he realized that there was no connection between people living their faith and their real lives outside. So there was a duality, there was a disconnection. People would live their lives differently from their faith. And he was challenged by how the students were asking and questioning him about faith. So that started his weekly discussions with the students. I never met him personally. By the time I was part of the movement, he was really quite old and infirm. And he would normally just be in a video conference with us responsibles. I never met him personally. But I can imagine how charismatic his personality was, to give a very strong impression on the students, the high school students. So these high school students hang around with him, trying to catch all his thoughts about living faith. how we could really live faith in a realistic way. How the Christian event, when you talk about the Christian event, how Christ entered our history, how it can be lived in the present, not as something that happened 2,000 years ago, but something that is living, is present in the student, in the mothers, in the fathers, in families. So as he went through that, he was slowly building a following. He always mentioned, I never intended to found a movement. Right? So it just came out of the desire of these people who followed Father Giussani in all of these years. And even as they moved on to college, they were still seeking this man who was speaking something that adheres or bears a very strong correspondence to what they're living. They're looking for something, and this man is talking about something that makes sense to them. So this group of people graduated from high school, went on to college, still being guided by Father Giussani. And as these people, this group grew through the turbulent 70s, they got married, they entered religious life, it spawned many, how do you say it? Sorry, nag-assign na ako eh. When you follow the religious life, anyway. Yes, you go from being a formation, or you found a calling for the religious life, a vocation. Thank you. A vocation. So some had a vocation for married life, some had a vocation, in fact a lot, entered the religious life, but they still followed Father Giussani. What is it about what he was saying that strikes a very important chord in their hearts? So they became Franciscans, they became Benedictine nuns, they became Carmelites, but they always seek the fundamental things that they learned in their youth when Father Giussani was very much a part of their lives when they were growing up. So as the years went by, the movement spread, as Sister has mentioned, it was spread through in all the continents, and we are in over 80 countries. But maybe you would probably, just to anticipate, like it says here, membership. Just to share with you how it started here in the Philippines and what brought me to the community. Later on, I will ask them what brought them to the community, because I'm also curious what made you attracted to the community of San Egidio. Okay? It always begins with a personal encounter, right? It will always begin with a personal encounter. It's not something that you will learn from class or from reading a book. It will always come from a personal encounter. And that personal encounter happened to me many years ago. I I was doing some volunteer work for a small community, Italian community in Quezon City. Sister John knows this, the Bonellians, also founded by another Italian. Their charism is really on the handicapped and physically and mentally handicapped people, and also old people. They're in the middle of a very big depressed area in Quezon City. So I came to know them, and I would go there periodically to do some charity work. Because as many Filipinos, especially in Metro Manila, who have gone to Catholic schools, I was raised and bred a Dominican. From kinder all the way to college, that's a Dominican legacy and tradition that I have grown up to. However, growing up, there will always be the duality. I couldn't find myself really understanding how can I translate what I learned in school, from kinder until college. How could I apply it to my personal life? It has never matched. As all young people would always think that the sisters are the sisters, the priests are the priests, the lay people are lay. Alright? And never the two shall meet. Something like that. So it's always a mystery for us, how can people dedicate their lives the way the religious would. But with my first encounter with a religious group such as the Bonellians, it somehow changed my understanding of living a full life. And it was through that serendipitous meeting inside a community that was not even CL that brought me to the community or the movement, Community Liberation. There happened to be a priest who was visiting. He was based in Thailand. He was visiting from Thailand to take some studies here. And he tried to talk about a movement that I don't quite understand. But because of a personal relationship, a friendship that was born I trusted that he would like to share something that was very important to him, that struck me. So basically, it started from friendship. That is the core of all the movement's activities. It will have to be with friendship. That is the first thing. You follow friends. You like to be with your friends. Your friends would like to give the best to you. There is something good that happened to your friend. Your friend would like to share it to you. That's the basis or the core of the movement. It is a friendship lived. And then I realized that this was something important for me. It resonated with what I was desiring for. And the friendship started from there. It was not going to be a very easy friendship because these people left and I was all alone here. For many years, I was the only one. In fact, the movement is not as big as the community, that we just heard this morning. For a very long time, they called me the responsible for the Philippines, but I was responsible for nobody else but me because I was the only one here. For many, many years, they would invite me to go to Italy to attend the annual meeting of responsibles. And I would be lost in a sea of people, and they would talk about communities in Brazil, especially in the States, in Latin America, where there are hundreds and thousands of people following the movement. And here I am all alone, not knowing how do you actually begin all of these things? How do you recruit? How do you evangelize? How do you spread? And the thing that struck me by what Father Carol mentioned, you don't begin a movement. You live a friendship, and that is the beginning of the movement. You don't go into the corner street with a banner that says, "I'm CL, join me. Free drinks afterwards," or something like that. You don't advertise it that way. You advertise it by the way you live your life. It was going to be very, very long and a struggle. You see, I come from the corporate world. I've been in the insurance business for many years. I retired after 21 years in Manulife. I saw Manulife was one of your sponsors. I retired in 2010, so hindi na tayo nag-abot doon. I do. Yes. All right. Okay. See how strange the mystery of Christ bringing us together. So after many years in Manulife, I retired. I went back to my original love, which is teaching. Because prior to insurance, I was a college professor at the University of Santo Tomas. As I mentioned, I was schooled in UST as a Dominican, and I taught for practically almost 10 years at UST. So after several years, I went back to my original love, which is teaching. So I got back into the industry, but now I'm no longer in sales. I'm already in training. So I'm now with Generali, also a life insurance company, but basically head of training and sales development. But why am I saying this? My corporate experience, my corporate thinking, made it more difficult for me to really understand how to put together this kind of calling that is very, very new to me. In my corporate mind, there must be a plan. There must be a schedule. There must be a goal. There must be a target. How many people do I have to recruit? When? All of these things, that's very corporate. And Christ does not want a corporate mind. Christ wants a mind that follows and just becomes obedient to his calling. So in the beginning, it was very difficult. But then slowly, I realized, just by living where I am, who I am, in Manulife, because that was where I was really most involved in those the years, then it struck me that it is something that people will realize over time. So one of the very first people who asked me was one of the persons whom I've not really thought about even inviting. Right? She was not even a close friend because my closest friend is not even Catholic. My closest friend is a born-again Christian. And would always try to argue about what she does and what I do. So there's always a conflict, but she's my best friend. Anyway, she passed away some years ago. But anyway, the point is, I was able to discover something that moves, not because of me. In fact, it is in spite of me. In spite of what I do, it is something that moves in spite of me. So it has nothing to do with who we are. And that was one of the things that I learned in the movement. There's nothing about you, nothing to do with you. There's always something to do with what moves you, and which is the spirit. So if you were to talk about the movement, no? We're not really a community, we're not an association, we are a movement, how the movement grows, let me just share from my personal sharing to the things that probably would give you a more clear understanding of who we are. So, membership. Okay. So, as mentioned, this is actually, well, we call it association for lack of a better word, but it's really a movement. It is guided by the President, Father Carol, and the Central Diaconia, of which all the international leaders are members. So in each country, there is one responsible. At the moment, I am, who coordinates with the central office of the CL International Center in Rome. When we say there is no official membership, it simply means that we are not a card-bearing group. You can look at my bag, you don't find any ID. Alright? So we're not a card-bearing group. You don't apply for membership. Anyone could be a member. What Sister was talking about, the fraternity of community liberation, that is where enrollment, or you apply for membership. But the movement, first and foremost, the movement is free for everyone. Alright? So there's no fixed thing about membership. So that was very difficult for my corporate mind to understand. How can a group work if there is no fixed grouping? Alright, so there's no official membership. Okay. And let me just read from this book. It just says here, one of the characteristics of community liberation, to which the movement has always held fast, and which distinguishes it immediately from traditional Catholic association, is the absence of any form of application for membership. Anyone who wants to belong to CL can do so without asking permission from anyone else. The life of the movement tends to elude what Pope, here he was still Cardinal, no? That's why it's Cardinal Ratzinger, or Pope Benedict has called the risk of self-occupation on the part of numerous institutions and elements in the Church. So he was alluding to that, but we go beyond that, the self-preoccupation. That is to say, the call which goes out to CL adherents insists on the missionary vocation at the movement's origin, rather than the creation of organs and organizational structures whose activity takes place within the movement itself or the Church. So we're not preoccupied with setting up structures that is very predominant in many ecclesial movements or associations. It is the spirit of missionary work that prevails. No? So when we say free membership or membership is free, that is basically what we mean by it. Alright. So when we just taking over what she has prepared, sharing on the CL Charism. The fraternity is different, as you will see, established in 1978, but in 1982, that was when it was recognized to be an ecclesial movement. So this is where some, not all, some of our members openly and willing, subscribe to and become a member to. So the more serious people within the communion and liberation movement would like to live a life in communion with all the other people worldwide, and that is when they join the fraternity of communion liberation. So those are two different things. The movement, free membership, but the fraternity is based on really years of enriched life with the movement. And this is where most of our members would normally end up with, meaning enrolling. So here, the association takes on a structure, because then your application will have to be accepted by the central. Because there are certain norms that you have to follow once you are a member. It tells them that you're dedicating and committing your life to follow the movement more closely than before. Now, born of this movement, the fraternity of the missionaries of St. Charles Borromeo started in 1985. This was a product of the charism of the movement, moving young men to form a group. So these are largely priests who were once upon a time members and are still members of the movement. So would you recognize it as the priestly society within the movement, you could say that. So this was born out of the desire of the CL members, who were probably diocesan priests and other priests, who would like to form a group, and this was born, the Fraternity of St. Charles Borromeo. Okay. Another group of people founded in 1988 is the Memoras Domini. The Memoras Domini, we have heard the Popolare. The Popolare is also a lay movement, and they have single blessed people, right? I don't know if that was shared in the last group, because we know some people from Popolare. And they call themselves, well, the single blessed, of course, in quotations, because you could be married and still be blessed, no? But this is the single blessed status of life. Meaning, these are people, lay people, single people who dedicate their lives and follow vows. The same token, in the movement, we have what we call the Memoras Domini. It is an association or a group of people who live together. We have houses for men, Memoras Domini for men, Memoras Domini for women. And these are people who live together, they follow the norms, they follow a life of prayer, they live together. And which is very, very interesting is because they come from different persuasions. Some are architects, they are professionals, some are regular office employees, secretaries. They live together and form a life together, guided by the charism of the movement. So normally this will have a spiritual director in the form of a priest who would constantly follow and guide the house. There are several houses of the Memoras Domini. Not in the Philippines, we don't have a Memoras Domini residing here, but normally if a presence is, they would want to establish a presence in a foreign land, normally they would either send a Memoras Domini to work, find work, alright, and establish a presence, build a house, and the others will follow. Right? So this is a Memoras Domini. So there are single people who are not religious, but they live like a religious. Strange, no? But I always say that's strange. Why don't you just become a nun if you have all of these vows anyway? But it's a different charism altogether. That is the Memoras Domini. The Fraternity of St. Joseph is another group. Unfortunately, I have very little information about this segment of our movement. Okay. Next sister. Alright. The congregation of the Sisters of Charity of the Assumption is probably, we have the priestly fraternity of St. Charles Borromeo, we have the nuns. Although also this is again based in Italy. If you'll notice, there are two. I'd like to draw your attention to the GS, Juventus Studentesca, and the CLU, or the CL University. As mentioned, Father Giussani founded the movement basically as a teacher of young people. So still, CL maintains the high school, Juventus Studentesca is really the high school arm, because that is where the beginning of CL really started. That's the high school chapter of CL, and we have the CLU, or the university. So these are groups of people, not adults, but so we have the adult, we have the CLU, and we have the GS. So, as you would expect, there's only one group here in the Philippines, just adult. Because for a long time, it's just me. So, but over time, even people from Manulife started following, and we have a small group, but basically just for adults. Okay? So if you look at how the movement started, it's really based on the youth, the education of the youth when they were starting. Okay. So some fundamental gestures, or how uniquely CL would CL be if you were to describe it. Right? First of all is the school of community. So here, it says here, fundamental way in which the charism is lived on a regular, usually weekly meeting. There is a reading and discussion of particular texts suggested by the central leadership from Monsignor Giussani or Father Giussani's writings, or from the church's magisterium. There is a trilogy, 3 books that are very fundamental to the movement. These are 4 books that Father Giussani wrote. And for many, many years, even up to now, we would always be guided with the teachings based on those three books. The religious sense is the first one, why the church, and at the origin of the Christian faith. These are the three core books. As like the books, your books, it's not locally available, and it's very expensive to have it brought here. So that's also a difficulty that we experience. You cannot spread awareness of the movement if that is also a challenge already. Of course, the Filipino ingenuity will always come up with photocopies. So photocopies are no problem. So when we have our school of community, it's basically on photocopies. We live by photocopy. So, sorry sister. What do we do during school of community? In fact, it says here, it aims at being a true school which, through the reading and discussion of texts indicated by the movement center, helps participants to come to a clearer understanding of the nature of the Christian fact and of the church. So the school of community is supposed to be public. It's not something private, done in a closed room with just the three of you talking about Christ. It's supposed to be a missionary gesture done in public. So it could be proposed in places of study or in places of work. And this is something born out of the idea that we have something of value to offer to others. So we encourage people to join us in School of Communities. Because it's quite difficult to organize a School of Community given all of the members are all working. We have School of Community once a month. We normally come together. But one of our members who's Italian, Francesco, also holds a School of Community in another place in the Bonellians. So it's really an open proposition for everybody to come and join. It's very difficult to study the text. So what we do is to study other literature. And I will show you in a while what I mean. Because there are other things or other tools that we can use. Alright? Okay. What we heard this morning, a while back, the Bay Bridge Band, is the American band. American meaning transported Italians in America. And they also started this Way of the Cross in New York. It can be quite appalling for a lot of New Yorkers to see the Way of the Cross in the streets of New York. Alright? And the movement specifically looks at this as a missionary gesture for the public to understand that prayer can be something shared, not only personal but shared in a community like this. So the first expression of communion, prayer, is the fruit of a truly experienced community life, and the movement encourages acts of personal as well as community prayer. When we go to prayer, so one of CL's distinguishing traits is its attention to acts of personal and community prayer, because we normally as a group would follow the book of hours. So there is a strong adherence to tradition in the movement. Alright? Because if you notice, it is encouraged that we follow the Pope as the primary source of strength and guidance in the church, our Archbishop, our bishops, our parish priests. So down to the level of the parishes, that is where we are encouraged to participate, to enliven the lives at the very core. We will not exclude ourselves from the tradition of the church. And also, we have a very strong attention to songs for the liturgy and the learning of hymns and canticles from tradition. See, Father Boni must have, I don't know if you were able to hear the traditional Benedictine chant when you went to Colomolo. Probably not, because it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Probably not. But that is very much a part also of the tradition, being part of liturgical music. The habit of reciting the Angelus, or repeating particular significant traditional ejaculatory prayers. We always begin and end our prayers with Veni Sancte Spiritus, Veni Per Maria. It is an ejaculation that we repeatedly say that is common to all the members of the movement. So you would recognize if he's a member, if he knows that ejaculatory prayer. Veni Sancte Spiritus, Veni Per Maria. It tends to generate in all of us, see an adherence, a familiarity with prayer in its truest and simplest sense. So what happens is we believe that prayer awakens this desire for us to be in touch, to be in communion. This is something that binds people together. Doesn't matter if you're African or Korean or Filipino. It's prayer that brings together because it's the truest and simplest form of communication with Christ. So it corresponds to everyone. Father Gisani would always say the heart of the Filipino mother is the same as the heart of an African mother, an Eskimo mother. It's the same. So it's the heart. If it corresponds to your heart, then it means that it is basic and fundamental. It is in you. So prayer is one portion. Manu.
How much more time? Because I think people really want to ask questions.
You do?
Sure.
Yeah. Just a few more things. Okay. Thank you, Father. When we say charitable work here, this actually is the organized charitable arm, but this has nothing to do with what charity work we can do individually, right? So there has been a lot of initiatives as far as charity work is concerned because it's an outpouring of what you feel. It's you're in communion with everybody. So we have this. We also have the food bank, where people are members who go to supermarkets and ask, if you're going to the grocery, when you come back, can you just give us one can of the sardines that you bought? So that's a food bank. We try to solicit food that way, to include the poor in your grocery, even by just a can of soup or a noodle or something like that. And this has been regularly done in Italy. We have tents of charity, also of the same nature. Many of our members, especially in Latin America and Italy, they also have a lot of visitation to the poor, just like all the others in the different communities. So it's not a plan of social action, but a way of learning through solidarity and free living. All right. You will notice that being a teacher, Father Gisani's exposure is always in the arts. And the arts has something to do with music, with painting, with literature, learning poetry, and all of that. It makes the experience more powerful, very human, because we cannot not respond to beauty and art. We will always respond to beauty and art. So the value of literature, music, and the arts, we discover the truth of the human heart, of beauty and human dignity, through songs, through music, through reading. So we're all encouraged to read. They will always send us a list of preferred texts that we read outside of Father Gisani. And we're encouraged to learn the poetry of Leopardi, understand the music of Verdi, and all the other Italian poets, musicians, composers, etc. In fact, when we enter a room, if we are about to have an assembly, it is observed that there is a classical music playing, and we have to observe silence as we enter. That is the discipline that the priest, as a teacher, I know because I'm a teacher also, as a teacher would like to suggest to us. A discipline, an orderly fashion, because you are about to meet Christ. So you have to put yourself in the presence of someone bigger, and the calling is to put yourself in his presence through art or music for that matter. Right? So singing is a very wonderful tradition, as you have heard. We have a lot of Italian, and I know that sister would let us hear the American version. You will equally be moved by the Italian songs that are original to the movement. Now, this is very interesting. We don't call it really holidays, but vacations. You will notice that in most, like especially in our Filipino context, basta bakasyon, anything goes, di ba? Or you're on vacation, anything goes. You pursue whatever is interesting because it's vacation time. It's not official. However, in the movement, Father Gisani mentioned that it's during vacations that you follow what is truest to your heart because there's no obligation. You are freest during vacation time. And if you can spend vacations still being Christian, that can be something unique in our modern society. A lot of people forget they're Christians when they're on vacation, right? Whether it's a holiday of obligation, but it's vacation time, we're in the malls, we forget about, there's the duality that comes in again. So Father Giussani started this tradition of vacation. He would bring students out into the mountains, out into the beaches, to discover the nature, the beauty of creation, and that is when they would feel closest to the Creator. So he was able to show the students, even if you're on vacation, this is where the true freedom lies, because you can choose. You're not obligated, all right, because it's free time. So this year has already changed the mindset of many people. So even now, even adults, we go on vacations. I was surprised the first time I was invited in a vacation. So I said, I was going to vacation, all right, there will be mountain climbing, etc., etc. I wasn't prepared that we have to wake up early because there would be the morning prayers, there would be the lessons before anything else. And then there would be, you would be going on a hike, but in the afternoon you come back, there would be mass. And then I thought after dinner we would all just, sing karaoke or listen to music. But no, there's a lesson after. So in the beginning, it was very difficult for me to understand. But then I realized what they're bringing together is the wholeness of life, especially so during vacation time. Right? Alright. So I have some copies of the magazine Traces. Alright. So this is a monthly magazine that we all get. In fact, this was my lifeline. When I discovered the movement way back in 89, sorry, no, in 99, when they left, when the priest who invited me to become interested in the movement, I was left with a magazine. And I had to follow up and become curious with how the life of the movement is through the magazine. So for many years, this was my lifeline. I was in touch with them every month that I would receive the magazine. Because in the magazine, I would discover stories of people, ordinary people like you and I. They lived lives with all the challenges, with all the heartbreaks and heartaches, and still be able to understand the value of life. So this is something that we normally give out to friends. I have about 25 copies, but these are back issues that I'd like to give to you. I don't know if there will be enough for everybody, but these are really, they're still in good condition, but kind of old. So you probably find a different pope there. In fact, maybe two popes. But basically, these are very interesting magazines. They don't become obsolete over time. Maybe it's not very important to talk about the more system at the end. Okay, so just going back to my original sharing, from then on I was able to follow the movement more closely, and it has grown from just one person to several people, basically office mates of mine from Man in Life. So they accompany me in my journey towards understanding how faith can be lived in the present. So I was very blessed when the group visited me. So they got lost in the hobby. So in this portion, they were very tired because they were looking for where the building was. But eventually they found themselves and were able to share a little meal and a simple sharing of experiences. So I hope that was able to help you understand a little bit of what the movement is all about. Thank you.
Jesus, marvelous.